Welcome to Dredging Deep. I like that title. It was just started doing this podcast. So, Dredging Deep, breaking ground in aggregate mining. Today, my guest is, first of all, I'm going to say I'm John Jones, my guest today is Steve Wagener. Steve is our head of controls here at Custom Dredge Works. And this show, or this episode of Dredging Deep, we're going to talk about Steve and his history, and then we'll finish up by talking about one of the new products we're going to have for an offering here at Custom Dredge Works. So, Steve, tell us how it all began.
Okay. So after I got out of the Army, went to Owens Technical College. I got a 2-year degree. Back in those days, it was called robotics or electromechanical engineering degree. After that, I went to work for Kuhlman Corporation as they're in the maintenance department. So I did, and Kuhlman Corporation, kind of a background, they're building materials. So they've got concrete plants, building material plants. They had sand and gravel on the Maumee River. So when I started in there, I kind of took over all the electrical and that kind of stuff for the plants. And then I went back to the University of Toledo to get my 4-year degree in electrical engineering. And kind of PLCs have always really, really intrigued me. And in 91, I went from maintenance into management, and I ran the location for the concrete plant. At that, and then later they talked to me about what happened on the sand and gravel on the Maumee River is houses started getting more and more valuable, and they didn't appreciate diesel engines starting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it made it difficult for us to continue dredging on the Maumee River. So Kuhlman purchased 750 acres in the Tecumseh-Clinton area and basically took their sand and gravel inland. And like with any new plants, the first few years, it was fabulous. Best thing they ever did. And kind of, I think they started producing around 97, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And then I call it eating iron. It's where you don't keep up on your plant. You're just producing and producing, and then you're wearing your plant down. And then all of a sudden it just starts to go just nosedive. Right. Downtime is just through the. So they asked me if I would go there and kind of run the operation. It was a chance for me to progress too, because it gave me profit and loss for an operating entity.
And right before that, what were you doing?
I was at one of the locations for the concrete. So their main facility, we call it Yard 1, was right in the middle of Toledo. That was their main operation. I ran the maintenance and the day-to-day for that main operation, but it was just one entity of their concrete operations. And by going up to the sand and gravel plant, it gave me profit and loss. I was the general manager for the concrete, or for the sand and gravel, CTE sand and gravel.
I got you.
So I was a general manager for CTE. Mm-hmm. And that was really different for me because I had never been in the sand and gravel business. So I kind of had to start from scratch. And we were there for 8 years. And to kind of give you an idea, I automated the entire plant. So when you came in to CTE sand and gravel in the morning, you had a panel and you just hit start. And the whole plant started up, and there was a traffic light up there. And in that traffic light, if everything was good, you had a green light. Mm-hmm. If the stone line went down, it turned yellow, because we could run for about 30 minutes with the surge bin. If the sand line went down, it was a red light, and then she shut down. But you could tell by the traffic light. And then we went through all of the pieces and said, if this stops, what do we want it to do? And I had a PLC on everything. Mm-hmm. And then the dredge took probably 3 or 4 years to get out to the dredge, because I didn't understand the dredge. Mm-hmm. So luckily there was this very boring book, Fundamentals of Hydraulic Dredging, that I had the privilege of reading. Mm-hmm. And that is just, and anybody that wants to know about dredges, that is the book. Yeah. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But we took that operation in 8 years, we took it from 300,000 to just over 900. Mm-hmm. And basically did that by splitting the plant away from the dredge, running the dredge 2 shifts and the plant 1 shift, and just maximizing production on that plant. Mm-hmm. Right about that time, that's when I was introduced to the wheel. And That's what I started my kind of, they call it a side gig now,
Mm-hmm.
is I got into automation and I started a company called Aggregate Automation. And I actually, that was the first kind of foray because I purchased the wheel without any controls on it. No drive, nothing. I actually, first when I put a mixer gearbox on it,
Right.
and found out what 25% service factor meant.
Yeah.
So that one didn't work, and the next one didn't work, and then I hit the books on that, and we wound
Right.
up getting a bigger gearbox and did some really neat stuff on that. And that's when I started doing controls. I started the building controls for other people in the aggregate business industry. After 8 years, we wound up selling that operation, and I came back over to Coolman and was general manager of all their facilities. And they have Florida portable concrete plants, nuclear plants. We would go out on nuclear plants and that kind of stuff. Until I believe it was about what year was 2019. It was a good family company.
Yep.
And it was kind of one of those deals. My side gig was I needed to choose one or the other. I kind of did pretty good in the industry. I wanted to give automation kind of a little more of a run at it.
Yeah.
So I wound up going to Midwest Mine Services. They were interested in expanding their line. They build conveyors and do a lot for the industry in the mining and the sand and gravel, but they didn't have any automation. So it kind of was a good fit. So I was an estimator for them and still continued the business. And then COVID hit. Right. And nobody knew what was going to happen when COVID hit.
Right.
I mean, as far as everybody was concerned, life ended.
Right.
And, we weren't going to buy anything. All the big boys said capital expenses are over. And things got a little interesting for Midwest Mine. And I just said, I'm good. It was a good run. I'm ready to take it on my own. And took it on my own, did automation as a full-time for about little over 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I met this guy at ConAg.
Yeah, he just comes walking into the booth. Hey, I want to introduce myself. And it was like, right away hit it off. And I was like, this is the guy we need. And got you to come back to the shop, gave you the tour and an offer.
Yeah.
And here we are now, having a lot of fun.
Yes.
Designing all kinds of great new products, automation products, is as well as just general products for dredges and aggregate mining. I mean, not just the dredges, but also controls for different stuff regarding aggregate mining. Just for a second, I'm just curious, when you were in the military, said you were in the Army. What did you do in the Army?
13 Charlie, which is, I ran the computers, if you want to call them computers. Back in 2000, or that was in 1985.
Okay.
It was in the back of a track vehicle, and it was they called it a computer.
Right.
And so I ran that. We would put in weather data. Whenever they would call in a fire, you would put the coordinates in there. And then you had a list of all the shells and what kind of bags, and you'd put that all in the computer, and it would send it down to the artillery, and they would let it rip. That was
that was what you did.
That's what I did.
That's crazy. And growing up, where did you grow up?
Swanton. Yeah, Swantucky, a lot of as known in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice little bedroom community. More rural than anything.
Right.
I don't know if the front door locked, kind of one of those places. All the cars had keys in the ignition, and that kind of thing. That kind of thing, and pretty much spent a lot of time under the hood.
Yeah.
I did go to. I graduated actually with airplane mechanics license because Toledo Express is actually in Swanton Township.
Okay.
And they had Maycomber Vocational High School had a mechanics course there through the vocational school. So I wound up going to. Actually, it was a Toledo public school, but I graduated with an airframe and general mechanics license.
So you've always been a gearhead since the beginning of time.
Yes, I was pretty much after I could walk, I was taking apart the lawnmower.
Right.
Got in trouble for that because Dad just bought it, and I I took the engine apart because I wanted to figure out how it works.
Right. And you told me when we hired you on that you kind of had an affinity for the aggregate side,
Yes.
for dredges, for the process of the
Yes.
plant. And, so it was a great fit for us because, most of our business, we push hard in the aggregate mining space, obviously with our dredges, but we concentrate pretty heavily on the aggregate mining side
Yes.
of our product line. So I'll tell you, it's been great. We're just barely getting started, but we've got a lot of great things coming. And that really that segues for us right into the product we were talking about.
Yes.
We're going to talk about which is your power scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could, if you wouldn't mind, kind of telling us, what the power scale is and how it can be applied.
Sure. I think, as a manager of a sand and gravel plant, probably the hardest thing to do is at the end of every month, we had to do inventory. So you go around, and I had all kinds of spreadsheets that 85-foot conveyor had 90 degrees, it was this meant this high, and
Right.
this, and you had to guesstimate. And I always said you had to throw your thumb in the air and figure out how much material you had. And the problem with that is at the end of the year when it gets surveyed for real, probably the biggest, when you're overestimating your piles by 30,000 ton and you went
Right.
from profit to a loss,
Right.
because you didn't do it right, that's probably some of the roughest times. And the power scale kind of came up there's belt conveyors, belt scales, and they're good devices. They work. The downfalls to a power scale is the cost.
You mean a belt scale?
Belt scale, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. So the downfall is they're costly.
Right.
And the other thing is they're a mechanical kind of item. You're weighing the belt. You got sensors on there for speed. You're constantly cleaning them off. They're just a maintenance item, but they work. And it's always, so as time kind of went on, it's always been in my craw because we had a couple belt scales and we would do that on the main piles, and it definitely helped. And I always try to keep up on the latest and greatest trends and this and that. And I came across this meter that would measure power, not amps, because amps are not linear. So you can't, I'm sure there's an equation you can throw in there, but the power is literally power. So what we did with this is we measure the power that it takes for that conveyor to move the material. And we've actually got quite a few of these out there at other locations, and it works. So the advantages to that are there's no moving parts other than what you already have. You already have your conveyor. And you have all these components already. What we are doing is we put a sensor on there that measures, I'll get geeky talk for a minute, is the phase angles between voltage and current. And as a motor is not loaded, those are far apart because it's an inductor, not a motor. And as it gets loaded the phase angles come together. So we measure how far off those phase angles are, and by doing that, we actually get power. So when you take the residual loads off your conveyor, which is just the skirts, the belt skirting, how much a belt takes, we zero that part out. And the rest of what's left is the material that you put on the belt. Now, it's taken some tweaking over the years of how do we take some of the downfalls are cold. A cold belt has more load than a warm belt. But over time, we've kind of worked out some of the bugs with the cold stuff. But the nice thing about it, we've got a couple locations where all their piles have belt scales on them. So not only do they get those inventory numbers, they can see actual production numbers as they're happening
In real time
on their phone. The accounting department doesn't have to call down and say, "Hey, where's my inventory?" You're supposed to have that to me by the first week of at the end of the first week of the month. They go right online, download it off their, they can download it, they can see it.
Right.
Monthly totals, it's logged if they want to pull it up. But it really takes a lot of the pressure off of the plant manager on the inventory side. And not only that, but now you get to look at your operation throughout the whole day. You can see their highs and lows. And I tell the customers, what's really important is to watch the zeros or the low times. You got to figure out, why did we go low? I used to make the guys document, because that was another thing we looked for at CTE, was we kept measuring uptime. Now, if you plan to be down on Friday for maintenance, that's not downtime.
Right.
But when you go down during the day, every time, I actually had a chart, and we can do it with power scale, where you see your curves. Now, I used to make the managers write every time it went to zero. I want to know why.
Right.
I don't care. I mean, if the loader guy has to go to the bathroom, that's good. That's a reason. So we have to figure out how to give him a break so we don't have to go down for that. Whatever the reason is, and start knocking out your big offenders.
Right.
I used to tell the guys, I don't want you to bust your butt. We want to work consistent through the whole day. It's not about, I don't want you to bust your butt, to try to peak out production. Let's just steady wins the race.
Right.
You need to make these, or you want the plant to work steady all day long, and that's good for the plant.
Yeah.
And that your numbers are through the roof. So with this power scale, it gives you the tools you need to at least start documenting some of that downtime.
I see. So did you got that from your time really at the plants, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So your experience has brought you to that point. So we're going to be debuting that product at Ag One, and we'll have some literature and everything available there. Steve, I appreciate you coming to talk to me today.
Thank you.
And we'll do many more of these, as this goes on. So super excited to have you with us, and
It's a lot of fun.
And we'll call that a show.